I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Antonio Ales, who is our presenter for this special collaborative program to celebrate Latinx culture. Dr. Ales has devoted his career to building, commissioning, and operating the most powerful telescope built to date, ALMA, which stands for Atacama Large Millimeter Array. Shortly after completing his PhD in astronomy at the University College of London in 2006, he moved to Charlottesville to join the newly formed North American ALMA Science Center. In 2011, he joined the scientific staff in Chile, where he spends his time between functional duties, researching the field of star and planet formation, as well as in education and outreach activities. Since 2016, Dr. Ales acts as manager of the Research Experience for Undergraduates in Chile program, where students from underprivileged and underrepresented groups in Chile are offered the opportunity to gain professional experience in areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, working with members of ALMA staff. As many scientists, his interests embrace music, as you will see for yourself. I am excited that Dr. Ales's talk is a celebration of science, music, and culture. Thank you very much for joining us, and it is my pleasure to let Dr. Ales give his talk. We have had some issues earlier, but I think we're ready to go. Antonio, when you are.
Thank you very much, Jean, for this nice introduction. I would like to thank the Manfred Olson Planetarium at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, to Jean Creedon and to Victoria Robinson for giving me this opportunity to share my very personal views of the Chilean skies and the music that has been inspired by them. And to set the tone of the conversation, we begin with the sounds from the Andes mountain range, the so-called Andean music. It is in the very high Andes that most of the telescopes are located. This song is from Inti Illimani, an instrumental and vocal Latin American folk music group that made themselves famous around the globe, especially in the early 70s, while they were touring around Europe during their political exile. And what is so special about Chile? Well, let's take a look from space. This is an image taken from the International Space Station, looking at the northern part of Chile. Chile is this very elongated and thin land that lies between the Andes mountain range on the left and the Pacific Ocean on the right. And what strikes you immediately when you look at this image is that there are almost no clouds. Northern Chile has clear skies almost all year round. And of course, that is fantastic for astronomy because it means you can see the stars. Chile boasts a huge diversity of natural terrain, from the dry deserts in the north, actually the driest desert on Earth, the Atacama Desert, to the green valleys in the middle regions of Chile, where pisco and wine grapes are grown, to a multitude of forests, lakes, and active volcanoes in the southern parts of the country. As we saw on the image from space, northern Chile has very clear skies, almost all year round, more than 300 nights per year of clear skies. And that, combined with a very dry atmosphere and very high mountains, provides the best conditions for astronomy. Clear skies, dry air, and very, very high mountains. Chile has the highest concentration, the largest concentrations of high observatories in the planet. Astronomers tend to choose very high sites to put their telescopes because the higher the telescope is, the smaller is the portion of atmosphere that the starlight has to traverse in order to reach the telescopes. The music that's going to start now is another song from Inti Yemani, very good for this slide because it's called Alturas, means heights. And this is why we go to the highest places, because if you think of the atmosphere is actually another sea. It's like a sea of air, but by being at sea level, light has to go through a very thick portion of atmosphere, and atmosphere is very bad for astronomy and for starlight because it absorbs the light. And this is why astronomers are always seeking for the highest place on Earth. Right now, the ALMA Observatory is the highest observatory on Earth at 16,000 feet above sea level. That's 5,000 kilometers. Of course, Chile is not the only good place for astronomy in the world. There are several other exquisite astronomical sites, some of them in South Africa, many of them in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Canary Islands, in Arizona, and in Hawaii. Hawaii is the best site right now in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's very important that we do put telescopes in the Northern Hemisphere because that way astronomers can study the entire sky. But of all of these sites, Chile is really the one that has the best condition. And that is why in the near future, Chile will host over 70% of the astronomical power on Earth.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
This is why.
Antonio, I'm going to interrupt you for a sec. I think you need to exit sharing your screen and you need to click the checkbox that says share your audio because we're not hearing the music. There you go.
Well, that's very bad. Well, I was sharing sound.
That works.
You can hear the sound now?
That's great. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll pick up from here then. So we're talking about why Chile is important for astronomy, that it has the best conditions, really, and why, because of its unique conditions, Chile will host 70% of the astronomical power in the coming years. This is why Chile has been declared a dark sky sanctuary, and there is even a motion to declare them a World Heritage Site in order to protect them from light pollution. How is the sound okay? Can you hear now? Is it too loud?
The sound is fine. You might want to just turn it down a little bit so we can hear you comfortably.
Do you want me to start over, or do you want me to pick it up from here?
No, I think you should carry on. You're
okay,
doing
we'll
fine.
carry on.
It's great.
I apologize to everyone for the technical difficulties.
These are very minor, and people appreciate that we're trying to run something from between two countries. So we're doing just fine.
Thank you. So Chilean skies have been declared a dark sky sanctuary, and there is even a motion to declare them a World Heritage Site in order to protect them from light pollution. So we've already seen that Chile has very clear skies and very high and dry sites that makes them one of the best sites for astronomy. But there is another advantage of being in the Southern Hemisphere, and that is that we can look directly at the center of the Milky Way. This is what is pictured in this photo taken in the northern Chile. What you see here at the center of the image, not the bright spot. The bright spot at the bottom is probably the moon, but the striped, patchy object that we see crossing the photo is actually our Milky Way galaxy. That's our galaxy. And because we're in the southern hemisphere, this part of the galaxy, the center of the galaxy, passes right above our heads in most of the winter time. Whereas in the northern hemisphere, only parts of the northern hemisphere can access this. But what does that mean, the center of the Milky Way, right? Most people are more familiar with this image of the Milky Way, okay? And this image of the Milky Way is a cartoon representation of how our Milky Way would look if we were able to fly away from it. This picture shows the location of our solar system in the red arrow. And as you can see, we are submerged in the middle of the disk of the Milky Way inside a spiral arm, the local Orion arm. And because we are submerged in the middle of the disk, it's very hard for us to realize that we are inside a spiral galaxy. You can think of it as if I was a pepperoni inside a pepperoni pizza. If I was a pepperoni inside a pepperoni pizza, it would be very hard for me to tell that I am actually inside a pepperoni pizza, because all I will see in all directions will be just cheese, or maybe one surrounding pepperoni. So I would see cheese in all directions except in the vertical direction. So it would be very, very hard for me to actually realize that I am on a pepperoni pizza that is relatively flat and has a thickness, etc. And that's more or less what we face when we're trying to understand where we are in the universe. This is the same image as before, taken with better conditions by a professional astronomer. And this is the view from the sky from Earth. And here you can see better our galaxy. You can see at the central part, you can see that it gets thicker, and that is the center of the Milky Way. And that is the part that I was saying can be accessed mostly from the southern hemisphere. So on the center, on the right side of this image, is what we call the southern skies that you can see from south of the equator, and on the left part is the northern hemisphere that are the skies that are accessible from Hawaii and other astronomical sites. Another advantage of being here in the southern skies is that we can see these blurry objects that you see on the bottom right. You can see there are two patchy white objects. They look a bit cloudy, diffuse, and they are disconnected from the Milky Way itself. These clouds, these blurry objects, are called the Magellanic Clouds. And they're actually two small galaxies that orbit around the Milky Way. In the same way that the Earth orbits around the Sun, these galaxies orbit around the Milky Way. And the Magellanic Clouds were discovered for the first time by Magellan when he did the first trip around the globe. He went down the south of Chile, Cape of Horns, and spotted these clouds. They thought they were clouds, but they turned out to be these irregular dwarf galaxies. They are dwarf because they are small. They are irregular because they don't have that nice spiral or elliptical shapes that we see in other galaxies. They are irregular because they are continuously pulling each other out through the forces of gravity. So they end up being deformed. But being able to study them in detail, you can take these amazing photos from the south of Chile, and that means we can study them in detail. So you can see that in this photo, there is a lot going on inside these galaxies. Those red, blurry patches are actually star-forming clouds. They are the sites where new stars and new planets are being formed. So it's almost like having a lab or a zoo in your backyard, and you can look at them all year round and have a very, very in-depth studies of what's happening in our neighbors. The song that I am sharing now is a song from Chilean songwriter Victor Jara. It's called Manifest. And Victor Jara has become a real, is well known all around the globe. He was an advocate for equal opportunities in Chile in the early 60s and early 70s, while the country was ridden with injustice. Unfortunately, he was detained during the first days of the military coup in 1973, where he was detained. While he was detained, his hands were broken, and just before he was killed. His songs today are known worldwide, and his legacy is incommensurable. In this song, called Manifest, he sings, "My singing comes from the scaffoldings to reach for the stars, because my singing makes sense when the veins palpitate. From whom we die singing the truthful truth," almost as if he could anticipate that his singing to represent the poor and the oppressed will cost him with his life. This song has really now become an anthem of traditional folk Chilean music. So right now I'm going to take you through a tour of the most important astronomical sites in Chile. And I'm going to start with the professional telescopes that are done to carry out top-level research. There's high competition all around the globe to use these telescopes from all astronomers all around the world. And then I'm going to show you a few public observatories that are open to the public, that are useful for tourism and for outreach activities. So, because of these unique conditions that Chile has, professional observatories have been installed here since the early 50s. The romance between Chilean astronomy started in the early 50s in the area around La Serena. That is about 400 kilometers, 250 miles north of Santiago, the capital. And in the early 50s, scouting teams from both Europe and North America started exploring the area around La Serena, particularly the mountains near the Elqui Valley, to characterize the site. And they decided these were far better sites than what they had in the Northern Hemisphere, and they decided putting some telescopes around there. Cerro Tololo Observatory is probably the most known of them. Cerro Tololo Observatory is run by the Association of Universities for Research in Astronomy from North America, AURA. And you can see several telescopes in the summit. Of course, the one that strikes more to the eye is this big dome, is the big dome of the Blanco telescope. That is a 4-meter telescope. The mirror is 4 meters in diameter. And here's another view of the night sky from Blanco telescope. And Blanco telescope has really had many discoveries that were fostered thanks to this facility. Of which probably the most relevant one is the one that led to the Nobel Prize of 2011, the discovery of the acceleration of the universe. The universe was discovered not to only be expanding, as everybody knows, but also accelerating. And that was due thanks to the work of Chilean astronomers that developed a new calibration technique that allowed their colleagues to calibrate their data and infer that the universe was moving faster and faster. You can see the Magellanic Clouds on the left and the Milky Way on the right. And on the bottom right, next to the Blanco telescope, you can see the Southern Cross, which points to the Southern Pole. This song is again by Inti Illimani. You can see here the voice. I'm going to let you listen more the voice of the beautiful voice of José Cebes. And the song is titled Canto de las Estrellas, or Song of the Stars. But the song doesn't tell a song for the stars or about the stars or about the skies. It's actually a paraphrasing of Victor Jara's manifest. They rob and they change parts of the lyrics from the manifest, making this tribute to the artist that has shaped Chilean music and Chilean society forever.
Sea el camino menos largo, no canto ni por encargo ni por tener buena voz.
Another North American telescope that's located around the La Serena area is Las Campanas Observatory, located in Cerro Las Campanas Hill. You can see several small telescopes on the slopes that had also had groundbreaking discoveries during their lifetime, but the real jewels on the top are the twin Magellan telescopes that you can see here in this photo. There are two 6.5 meter telescopes that you can see here under the Milky Way. Right in front of Las Campanas is La Silla Observatory, which is run by a consortium of European governments, the European Southern Observatory. This is where the Europeans started putting their first telescopes in the early 50s, and you can see you can hardly fit anything else in this summit. They have really exploited to the limit the advantages of this site. Here's a night view of the skies above La Silla. On the right, you see an antenna. It's a Swedish submillimeter antenna that was really one of the pathfinders and the pioneers for submillimeter and millimeter astronomy in Chile. What really opened the ground for the further installation of ALMA. Also around La Serena is the Gemini telescope, which is a telescope run also by Aura, that has a twin telescope. It's one of two twin telescopes that are located in Hawaii and Chile. So by putting two 8 meter telescopes in Chile and in Hawaii, Aura can have access at all the sky all year round. However, in the early 90s, astronomers started looking for even better places for astronomy, and that took them to the scouting parties to over 2,000 kilometers north of Santiago, to the Antofagasta area, at the very heart of the Atacama Desert. And this is where ESO, the European Southern Observatory, installed the Paranal Observatory that, near the coast, south of Antofagasta. This observatory hosts the very large telescope, which is this array of four 8.2 meter telescopes that can be connected underground via relay lines and lines of mirrors that you see here in white, that allows to combine all these already super powerful telescopes into a mega power telescope. There are so many photos around that it was hard to pick a few to show you, but astronomers, this site is really spectacular. The technology is amazing. A James Bond movie was filmed in here as well, and really astronomers cannot get tired of taking photos of the facility and the sky itself. Like this photo, for instance, of the Leonids meteor shower, where you had several objects, several little meteorites entering the atmosphere. Around Paranal Observatory, there will be also a new telescope installed. It's the extremely large telescope that is going to be a 39 meter telescope, the biggest telescope ever built on Earth. And this is already being built right now. The song arriving now is a song from Congreso, another Chilean group. And the title is El Cielito de mi pieza, the little sky from my room. And it's a romantic ballad in which they describe how they imagine wandering and traveling through the sky by just looking and dreaming, looking at the ceiling from the room.
Con sus propias estrellas y su propio sol.
If we travel inland in the same area of Antofagasta, if we travel around 300, 400 kilometers from Antofagasta into the desert and into the mountains, we will reach the oasis of San Pedro de Atacama. This is a view of the road between San Pedro de Atacama and Calama, and you can get a feeling of how dry and barren the land is. However, once you reach the oasis, you're in for a treat, because San Pedro de Atacama is one of the most visited places in Chile for tourism. It has a huge diversity of activities and places to see, from hot springs, red desert, altiplanic lagoons, salt lakes, and a very, very active touristic life. And nearby the San Pedro de Atacama area, in the high plateaus above the San Pedro de Atacama area, is where the Chajnantor Plateau Observatory is located, which is the host for the ALMA Observatory and several other telescopes that are being installed in the surrounding mountains. But of course, Atacama is the one that takes all the photos these days. You can see here the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array. It's called an array because it's an array of antennas that operate together to make the most powerful telescope in the world. Right now, we are already familiar with the Magellanic Clouds that are seen above the array in this photo. I'll show you some photos of the surroundings so you can get a feeling of what it's like to be here. This is the operations support facility around the ALMA Observatory. This is where I spend most of my time. I've spent many nights already looking at the sky through the telescopes in this facility. The antennas themselves, they are high above the road. They are at 16,000 feet above sea level, whereas here we're around 9,000 feet. And when we look to the Salt Lake, this is the views we get. I think there was a sandstorm. That's why it's hazy at the bottom. But normally it's all very pristine landscape. And even though it's one of the driest places on Earth, we can get also some rain. These are thunderstorms that happen during the monsoon season in the Amazon. When there is rain season in the Amazon, some of these water-loaded clouds, they can permeate through the Andes and bring these thunderstorms, which of course are not great for astronomy. But they give beautiful sights, and you can even see water in these prehistoric crevasses and cracks. Bird's view of the array, and more photos. The song playing now is another romantic ballad, almost like a lullaby, called Mira Niñita from Los Jaivas, another traditional folk music, popular music group from Chile, in which they call the name Look Girl. It's inviting to look at the sky, look at the moon, look at the sea, and just forget for a moment about what being human is. There is rich wildlife around the San Pedro area: foxes, wild donkeys, alpacas, relative from the llamas. And of course, after it rains, we get lots of snow. And it's actually after the snow that we get the best conditions, because all the water vapor in the atmosphere is frozen. And this is why we are there, because being in the highest places on Earth, driest places on Earth, that means we can do amazing discoveries. Like this one that was featured last year, the first image of a black hole. This is the first image ever made of a black hole, and it was made in combination with other observatories, but particularly thanks to ALMA. This is how we always thought that black holes should look like in theory. Computational models predict this in the bottom left, but in the bottom right are the actual observations that were made possible thanks to combining ALMA with other telescopes around the world. But as I show you here in the bottom image, on the left, you have the image using all antennas, and on the bottom right, you have what the image would look like if we didn't have ALMA. So really, to capture the image, it was fundamental to have ALMA. I'm going to show you now quickly some images of other touristic observatories that are easy to access if you're traveling through Chile. Observatorio Mamayuca in Valle del Elqui, seen by night. So there's really been proliferation of public observatories because so much demand to visit and to get a feeling for what astronomy is like that there are now many public observatories that people can access, like this one called the Southern Cross Observatory, Observatorio de la Cruz del Sur, that even has an amphitheater to host outreach activities. And of course, there is this one also, a space in the San Pedro de Atacama area. So really, if you're gonna be traveling through Chile, I encourage you to do some astrotourism. Now I'm gonna switch, quickly I'm gonna switch screens, and I'm gonna tell you a little about something different. I'm going to tell you about this project that we put together in 2016 and early 2016 when the Sonar Festival was going to be hosted here in Chile. Sonar Festival is a well-known music, technology, and innovation festival that happens in Barcelona for over 20 years, and they were going to host a version here in Chile. So we were contacted by the organizers, the local organizers. They said, well, we want to do something with you guys because you represent technology, and we want to do something with Chilean identity. And since we all know that we have the best skies, all Chileans are a bit nationalistic about the skies and kind of proud of having the best skies. So they came to us and said, well, can we do something together with your technology and the skies? So we went through a lot of conversations trying to think how we could put something together, right? And it was not easy because, as you know, arts and science these days tend to be separated. So we had to think out of the box, and I'll tell you a little bit what we did. But for that, I need to explain you a little bit what ALMA does, right? ALMA is this telescope that gets all this signal from sky, combines it with several antennas, sends it through a computer. And what you see on the bottom right is actually the output, what we get. And that image is what we call a spectrum, the graphics that has, nothing, and it has some peaks, right? So what ALMA does is that it's scanning through all the frequencies, moving to the right. And every time it reaches a peak, it says, well, I detected something. What is that something that we detect? When you're scanning with your tuning with your radio at home, every time you get a peak, that means you're tuning into a radio station. But when we do that with the telescope, particularly with the ALMA telescope, we're tuning into different molecules. So each of these peaks represent a given molecule. And this is how we do astrochemistry. This is how we can understand what is the universe made of, really. So having all these peaks means that we're detecting different molecules. And which molecule it is, well, we can tell because we can run laboratory experiments. You can do that in the lab. You can put something into this weird machine that's going to heat it up, and then you're going to see some light coming through your molecules. You get it into a computer, and you get the spectrum from your molecule, right? And you can compare where you get in the lab with what you get from sky, as this image shows. Red is from the lab, blue is from the sky, and that way astronomers can identify which molecules are present in whatever object you're observing in the universe. This spectrum is very rich. It comes from a very rich star formation region. And this is how we make discoveries. This is what ALMA is really good for. Not only pretty images, but also telling you a lot about what's happening inside your objects. And that is how, for instance, we discovered glycoaldehyde in a star-forming cloud in 2012. What is glycoaldehyde? Well, it's some sort of sugar that is actually poisonous for humans, but it's fundamental for the replication of DNA in all living cells. So the discovery of this type of molecule in other star-forming clouds may mean that the ingredients for life are ubiquitous in the universe, meaning that maybe life can emerge everywhere. This is also how we discovered, this is something from, a week ago, September 24, we detected phosphine in Venus clouds. And the interesting bit about detecting this molecule in the Venus clouds is that it could be a biotracer. For instance, all the phosphine that we see here on Earth was created by either living beings, living cells, living organisms, or industrially by humans. So it's tentative to think that the phosphine we're seeing in Venus may also come from living cells. But back to our spectrum and what ALMA does, you already got the idea that the spectrum that ALMA gets means each peak means a molecule, right? Well, what we did is to try to play something with the analogy between the spectrum of light and the spectrum of sound, because sound, music also has a spectrum. If you were born before the 90s, you may know what the thing on the bottom left is. It's an equalizer that used to come in all stereo equipments. You could crank up the basses or crank down the highs if you wanted to change what sort of music you wanted to hear. And since light is an electromagnetic wave and sound is a mechanical wave, they are both waves, so they both have this spectral representation. And music notes are also pure tones at a given frequency. Okay, if you play different notes, they will have a very specific frequency. For instance, A is for 40 hertz. So what we did is to play with the analogy between the spectrum of light and the spectrum of music, and we took the spectrum that comes from the sky and we decided to play it, to transpose it to frequencies that are audible for human beings. So we took different bits of the spectrum and we assigned sounds, but we tried to maintain the relations between the frequencies and the amplitudes in order to not to alter the spectrum that is coming. We're only playing it at a different frequency, but maintaining the information and the structure of the spectrum that comes from space. So I suggest you regulate your volume, because what you're going to hear now, it's what came out of this process, and they are not beautiful sounds. They are very crude sounds. Some of them are pure tones, like this one. So what we did, I mean, of course, that sounds really, really ugly if you play it individually, but we were not planning to get anything else. What we were hoping for is to bundle all these sounds together into a sound bank and make it available so that music producers around the globe can put into their drum machines and their computers and make music the way they do. Because the Sonar Festival is mostly aimed for music producers that are used to squeeze milk out of stone. So we made it public, and it got a lot of good feedback and a lot of welcome from the entire community. Many artists decided made tracks, electronic music tracks with these sounds, and some of those tracks even got released in a record label. Part of our sounds have been preloaded into drum machines that are sold worldwide and used by electronic music producers. And we even encourage people to submit the tracks, and I'm going to show you some of the ones that I find more relevant or that I like more. For instance, this track from the Chilean DJ and producer, DJ Raf. Let's see, it should be playing now. This one is you can think that this kind of music we would expect, some electronic music with some beats. But it's interesting to see that it also seems to capture the mystery and the quest, that we were doing when looking at the sky. I'm gonna let you listen to it first. These are very nice time lapses taken during nighttime at the ALMA site. So as I was saying, that's you can tell immediately that's an electronic track music, and I like it very much because, as I said, it captures this spirit of search that we are always carrying out, and curiosity at the universe. But the one I really like a lot is this track made by piano composer from Chile, Diego Razuriz. And this was a real surprise when we heard it, because it's really unique. It's not the typical electronic track music. This is mellow, almost romantic combination of our sounds with his piano. And it was a really nice surprise to see to hear this track that sort of captures how we feel when we spend all those nights in the middle of the desert, looking at the sky, asking, begging for nature to show us and reveal us a little secret. Sometimes astronomers may find hard to find the words to represent how we feel, and we think that Diego Razuriz with his track really captured what we were trying to express. All these tracks can be heard in our webpage, and more importantly, the sound bank is available for free download. So I encourage you to click on the link, get into the webpage, download the sound bank, and blast away. Thank you.
Wow, that was magnificent. Thank you so much, Antonio, for such a beautiful, sensitive, fantastic description of both the sentiments and the science. I don't think I've heard a better description of spectroscopy ever. So I'm going to have to steal some of those ideas from my class. People have been appreciating the music. They've appreciated many of the things that you've said. I'm going to give people a moment to think about questions that they have, but I would like to give you an opportunity to tell us, how did you get hooked on astronomy?
Well, it's because I am in Chile, but really, it's I guess if you were born and raised in a golf course, it will be very likely that you will end up playing golf. So since I was a kid, you'd hear all these stories about the observatories, and you'll go to the countryside and you will spend hours looking at the sky, and it's almost as if you can touch the stars, even though that's such a cliche. It's true when you can escape the big cities and their light pollution. So there are job opportunities in astronomy here in Chile because there are so many observatories here, and I've always liked science, nature, chemistry, biology, and all those disciplines that acknowledge how ignorant we are and how much there is for us to learn. So it was really, really as a kid that I would say that the curiosity started, and then I followed a relatively traditional university path. I entered the engineering school at Universidad de Chile, that has the sort of a not a college, but you don't have to choose what you want to do until the third year. You can go to engineering after third year, or physics or astronomy, and that gave me a little bit of flexibility. I think it's hard to be 18 years old and decide I want to be an astronomer, but if you have some flexibility, that allows you to navigate with less pressure those years. And well, eventually one thing led to the other. There are opportunities here in Chile for studentships, and there are also opportunities to go abroad. I went to the UK with a studentship from the Gemini telescope to do my PhD, and well, I think you summarized the rest very well in your introduction.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions. There's how do we follow you and the observatory on social media? Rachel V asks.
Well, there is ALMA Observatory in Instagram, and there is an ALMA Observatory official account in Facebook as well. There's also a Twitter one, and I think in the post they already posted in Instagram my account as well. If they wanna follow that. I'll encourage you to follow the Instagram account from the observatory, because they do an excellent job. There are so many discoveries really happening almost every week. So they really struggle to cope with the avalanche of press releases that they have to do. But nevertheless, both the Educational Public Outreach Department at ALMA and their counterparts in the ALMA regional centers, they do a great job and really in explaining and having nice graphics. So I'll encourage everyone to follow the ALMA Observatory official accounts.
Okay, and I think Victoria is putting some of these on the chat. There's which were the tourist observatories that were recommended around Atacama area? Could you please repeat? Rachel asks.
Sure, I think it would be better if we could post it in the description, because those are sort of indigenous names. So if I tell them, that may be complicated. But okay. in the La Serena area, the most famous one is Mamayuca Observatory near the city of Vicuña. I encourage everyone to visit Valle del Elqui. It's really, really beautiful. And that's also where they make the pisco grapes. It's a sort of our Chilean brandy, and we are known for our pisco sours. If you haven't had one, you're missing out. I encourage everyone to drink moderately, but try one. And then if we go further north in the Atacama area, in San Pedro de Atacama, there's really been a strong development in astrotourism over there. So I mentioned the Space Observatory, which is run by a French astronomer, and he's very good, and he's very serious. But there are many others doing astrotourism as well. So maybe it's good to check on TripAdvisor what people say, and the ones that have been highly rated, because there are good ones and not so good ones. So it's good to hear what other people say in social media.
Okay. Can we still, Chris asks, can we still submit music we create with the sounds to the project?
Yes, absolutely. You can email it to me or to the emails in the ALMA account, and
would you like us to put your email on the chat so that people can see? Would you like to make your email public?
That's fine. My email is public.
Okay. Victoria, can you please put that up so people can contact him directly? Let's see. We have thank yous from people, wonderful presentation. Some of these people, maybe I'm not sure. Pedro Bracia, Chris Coborn. Yes, and thank you, Victoria. She's put your email up. Any other questions? Do we have any other questions from the audience? I was wondering, I know that you're interested in outreach. I was wondering, which concept do you find hardest to explain? What stumps you?
Well, I think if you ask me, one of the richest benefits from this Alma Sounds project was to get to talk about this and raise curiosity on different audiences, not necessarily the astronomical literate, not necessarily the people that read the scientific media. And many interesting discussions, starting by what is light? Okay, when we started, when we had the artists and the organizers from Sonar come and talk to us, immediately they say, but you listen to space. And that means you need to start the conversation on, no, we don't. There is no sound in space. There's no air in space. And sound is a mechanical wave that needs a media to propagate. And we describe how my vocal cords start vibrating, and they in turn crush with the air molecules, and you have this propagating wave that reaches your eardrum, and then that is transforming an electrical signal that goes into your brain. But the sound is transmitted thanks to a medium. And that's why when people say in space, no one's going to hear you scream, well, that's true, because there is no screaming. There's nothing. Whereas light does travel in the vacuum because it's an electromagnetical wave. It's a whole different story, but that can be described with the same mathematical tools. And you would be surprised how, if you ask an audience, what is light? Most people don't know what light is. People don't know that, you have these particles of light that are being produced by this incandescent bulb and that are hitting my, increasing the growing forehead and then going into the screen, right? It's very interesting because definitely we need a society that understands these concepts more. And sometimes high school programs don't even cover those subjects. So I find it extremely motivating to get involved in this kind of projects, because really you never know what you're going to get.
Wonderful. I'm going to give the opportunity to the audience to ask any other questions. Dare I ask, which is, I was going to ask, which is your favorite observatory? And you can't say the one you're working for. You can't say Alma. Do you have another favorite special to you?
Well, I have a romantic attachment to the Valle del Elqui. It was really when I visited Valle del Elqui when I was 17 years old, and I was finishing high school, and I had just got my university, the grades for entering the university from the test, and I had to decide what to do, really. And it's really when I spent those 2 weeks completely offline. There was no internet at that time, or there was internet, but there was no smartphones or anything. And looking at the sky and spending time with friends and family in the Valle del Elqui, that I said, well, I'm going to go for this one. So all the observatories in the Valle del Elqui area are very special to me. My first visit to a professional observatory was at Cerro Tololo, and during an amateur astronomy congress, and I remember spending time at the feet of Blanco telescope and looking at the landscape. It's so beautiful. You have hills after hills after hills after hills, and you could see the sunset. It was really unique. Then when I was doing my PhD, I spent some time in Gemini, not only because they had financed my PhD, but because we were commissioning an instrument with my advisor. So I spent over 3 weeks in those same mountains. And of course, I feel a little bit of sadness, feeling that the Valle del Elqui area is being left for better grounds, actually for better skies. But there's still new projects being installed in the La Serena area. Actually, right next to Gemini, the Vera Rubin Observatory is being installed by Aura and a bigger consortium. And this is a unique observatory that is going to be scanning the entire sky several times per night at a very high precision, unprecedented precision. So astronomers are hoping to be able to study what they call the transient or variable stars, things that change with time, and actually most things change, but we've never had this sort of observatory, this sort of instrument that will allow us to capture all these changes in real time. So we hope we'll study, discover many supernova, nova, variable stars, near Earth objects, these things that asteroids that pass near Earth. You need to be looking at the entire sky all night and compare the frames in order to detect them. But there may be many more things that we don't even think we're going to discover. I mean, I don't want to go into sci-fi here, but this is probably our best shot at taking images of a UFO, right? Because we're going to be scanning the entire sky with high precision several times per night. So maybe, I'm going to leave that as a maybe. Now, on the downside, what we may be discovering more is these new constellations of satellites that are being sent up to the sky. You know that SpaceX has this project. If you look at the new documentary in Netflix, there is they make it clear that it's actually a financial move from SpaceX to have this constellation they call the Starlink satellites that are going to be broadcasting web internet to the entire globe. But they're going to be trespassing many observatory sites, and it's actually a real threat to astronomy what they're doing. It's particularly to telescopes like the Vera Rubin observatory. But they're not shutting us the door. They are communicating. They have teams at SpaceX working with astronomers trying to reduce, for instance, the reflectivity, the transmissivity of their transmitters and all those things in order to minimize the impact on astronomy. But nevertheless, it's very bad because we want to look up and not down.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think that people have been awed by your presentation. And I think questions came in as we were going, and you've answered all of them. I think you've done, and it's almost at the top of the hour. So you have done a beautiful job at keeping us at our seat's edge, talking to us about Chilean astronomy and music. And I think now we all just need an airplane. We all want to be able to get on an airplane and come and visit. Thank you again very much for the time and the care that you took to put together this presentation. We really appreciate that you shared that with us.
It is me who thank you. Thanks, Jean. Thanks, Victoria. Thanks to the planetarium for really giving me this opportunity to share what we do here. And thanks to everyone at the audience for listening and for the nice questions.
And I do hope that maybe we can do this again.
Hopefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. Somebody